everybody. Thank you for joining me. I'm talking today about something that has been quite disturbing to me as I've read the news over the past few weeks, and that is the massive cloud that the Election Commission of India finds itself under. Now, the ECI, or the Election Commission of India, is the custodian of our electoral democracy. It is an independent constitutional authority, and yet here we are with the opposition parties led by the Congress party making accusations of vote chori or malpractices that have occurred in electoral rolls. On the other hand, the ECI has conducted the SIR, or Special Intensive Revision, in Bihar, which has left over 62 lakh people off these rolls. And that is why it is in the Supreme Court with petitioners saying that this is unconstitutional. One of those petitioners is the much admired political and civil rights activist Yogendra Yadav. He's joining me today to explain what is going on, to make sense of a lot of things that we are reading but perhaps don't understand fully, and also the implications of this SIR project that is being conducted by the Election Commission of India. Yogendra, thank you for making time. This is a really grave issue that we are going to talk about today. Most Indians, all Indians, we're so proud of our electoral democracy, of the way elections are conducted. And I know when I go into vote and I leave the booth, I always get teary eyed for any election, even a municipal election or the general election that I vote in. How do we make sense of what is going on?
Absolutely, and rather the starting point should be exactly what you said. It's a matter that is sacrosanct. It's an institution, the institution of election, that we have been proud of with very good reasons. And therefore, the matter should be handled with extreme sensitivity and should not be handled like a street brawl. Now, when you are an umpire in a match, you're bound to face all kinds of criticism issues. That is usually the case. And this is not for the first time that someone has heard accusations at the Election Commission. You know, you were in the news business for long. And you would recall that in 2002, Mr. Narendra Modi went around in dozens of meetings in Gujarat, naming the chief election commissioner, not just J.M. Lingdo. He said James, Michael, Lingdo. This used to be his style. So this happened. Election Commission did not respond. Lingdo, I happened to meet him at that point. I asked him, how does it feel? Because I really used to respect him. He was a very learned man. He said, well, this is his privilege. He can do it. I am in a constitutional position. I cannot do that. I cannot retort. I cannot respond. It cannot be tit for tat. Otherwise, what's the difference? That's how the election commissions have handled this time. And that's how the public has also handled it, because this is something. At every end, extra caution should be observed. When I ask for evidence, for most things, I have this level of evidence. But when it comes to electoral fraud, I demand a much higher level of evidence. Because these are matters which are extremely sensitive, sacrosanct. And in the last instance, what is it that differentiates our democracy from, let's say, Bangladesh, Pakistan? I mean, I happen to name our neighbors, no disrespect for them. The difference is that in our country, when you lose election, you step aside and you say, all right, people have voted against me. There's a peaceful transition, and the peaceful transition is done through the mechanism of election conducted by an institution called Election Commission of India, which you may like, you may dislike, but in the last instance, you believe it's a fair match. If that goes, and remember, this is exactly what happened in Bangladesh and Pakistan. That's why I mentioned these two. Because after a point, the opposition said in Bangladesh, we can't take these elections seriously. This is a joke. And indeed it was under Sheikh Hasina. In Pakistan, on television channels, you discuss, okay, now the election commissioner must be going to the army headquarters to take instructions. Everyone laughs about it. And of course, they are right. We don't want to go that path. So we have to be very careful on every side.
Yogendra, you referred to, when JM Lingdo was CEC. But even in the past 2 years, the last general election, we have we have heard opposition parties, activists, watchers of the system, academics talk about how the election commission has lost its sense of impartiality, at least when it conducts, in the way it implements the model code of conduct, in the way it manages the election schedule. So we've seen some of that. But what we are talking about today is very different. Am I right in coming to that conclusion?
Yes, it is true that there has been a consistent decline. The accusations and suspicions did not begin today or yesterday. You would recall, to my mind, the most critical moment of, in a sense, turnaround was Ashok Lavasa. He was, for many viewers who may not remember, he was the election commissioner in 2019, appointed very much by the Modi government. He was there, is one of the secretaries in the government. And all Ashok Lavasa did was to say that in 2019 election, when Mr. Modi was launching his own channel, TV channel, in absolute violation of all the norms, he had the gumption to put a note of dissent, which was inoperational because obviously he was in minority. But he just put a note of dissent to say, I disagree. You should not be giving permission to launch a channel for a person in the middle of elections. And what happened to Ashok Lavasa after that? If you would recall, his wife, who was a bureaucrat, her 15-year-old files were opened up. She was harassed. Under mysterious circumstances, his son was removed from being the CEO or one top executive of a private firm. And strangely, Mr. Ashok Lavasa quietly gave a resignation from a constitutional position to go to ADB in Southeast Asia and gave it up. This is what an incident like this gives signal to everyone. If you dare defy, this is what happens to you. Now, I'm not saying in the past mistakes have not happened. I have been quite candid about saying that Mr. M.S. Gill, who was the Chief Election Commissioner, one of the very fine Chief Election Commissioners to my mind, he contested elections and he became a minister. I didn't like it one bit. It's not unconstitutional, but it's not done. Similarly, Mr. Naveen Chawla, who was considered very close to Ten Janpath, was made election commissioner. There were no grave allegations about his conduct thereafter, but the very appointment was not in good taste. It didn't fill the high standards that we have come to expect. So yes, there were failings earlier too, but what we have witnessed in the last 7-8 years, and as I said, especially after Mr. Lavasa's episode, is a complete. I mean, this election commission increasingly looks like an extension of the government, if not the ruling party. And what we have now, Anuradha, is clearly the lowest point because now the allegations are about fraud in an election. Allegations is about vote chori. So the language has sunk low, the allegations are more serious, and the level of trust is non existent. And frankly, the level of trust has fallen in the public as well. You must have read day before yesterday in the Hindu. There is a poll which has been monitoring level of trust in election commission for the last 30-40 years. I was with CSDS earlier. The levels they reported 3 days ago are shocking levels, never measured in the history of India. So we are looking at a very critical point.
So, Yogendra, let's look at the Bihar SIR case, which you have petitioned against in the Supreme Court. And I want to quote something that you have used in your petition. You have said that the SIR has opened the floodgates for the largest disenfranchisement exercise in the global history of democracy. If allowed to continue, the SIR is designed to result in further mass deletions in Bihar. And if allowed at the national level, as envisaged in the SIR order, this exercise is bound to erode the universal character of adult franchise achieved in the last 75 years. So, to a layperson, what does this mean? That what we have used so far is going to change completely as the basic bedrock of our election system?
Indeed, Anuradha, and I'm glad you noticed the core argument. My core argument is not that SIR has some Bihar specific issues, that some documents are not the best documents, that the timing is not perfect. No, my core argument is that something like SIR is structurally designed to be an exercise in disenfranchisement. Now, that would surprise people because the normal impression all of us have is that something was wrong with Bihar's voters list. Election Commission has ordered cleaning. Maybe they are in an overzealous mode. Maybe there is some local hera-fairy, but nothing very big about it. No, that's the main thing. SIR is not about Bihar. It is the beginning of an all India exercise. Bihar happens to be the first state where it's being carried out. Number two, SIR is not a revision of the existing list. It basically junks the existing list and it's a de novo preparation of a fresh list. All right. But the real thing is not that. The real thing is that SIR is a tectonic shift in the standard practices of adult franchise. There are two key shifts that are being made here. Number one, for the first time in the history of India, the onus of registering yourself as a voter is being shifted onto the voter. There are two kinds of countries in the world. There are countries where putting you on voters list is the responsibility of the state, state initiated registration. We are in that, and there are many countries where it's automatic registration. The moment you have a national ID card, you are automatically on voters list, etc. And then there are countries where the responsibility is on the voter, like in the US or in South Africa, where it's your individual responsibility. You go and register. If you don't, what can I do about it? Now, so the global evidence shows that in countries where the responsibility is on the state, almost near 100% of the adult population is on the voters list. And in countries where the responsibility is on the individual, nearly 20% get left out. In the US, I mean, just to give you an example, in year 2024, India was 99%, which is to say that the size of our voters list was 99% of the size of 18 or over 18 people, adult population. In the US, the proportion was only 74%. So that's the first big shift that the SIR has made. SIR says, we'll give you a pro forma, you fill it up by 25th July. If you don't, your name will not appear even on the draft list. You're out of consideration. You're out. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
And this is even if your name was there earlier, irrespective of whether your name
Absolutely.
is there on the list or not.
Absolutely, Anuradha. That's a point not many people appreciate. So I may have been a voter for last 20 years. Someone comes and gives me a form, or I hear in the village that some form is being circulated. I need to fill it up, but I know I'm already on the voters list. So what's an issue? Now, if your form did not reach the government by 25th July, and 65 lakh people could not submit their forms, or 65 names did not have
Yeah,
form, we don't know
yeah,
whether they are real
yeah.
or not. All right. Now, the effect of that is that these names do not figure on draft electoral rolls. The election commission says out of these 65 lakhs, some 22 lakhs are dead, 32 lakhs are permanent migrants. Now, suppose I've been declared dead. I find out in my village, they think I'm dead. No, I'm not. What is the response of the election commission? Election commission says, all right, if you think you're not dead, you go and fill a form and become a new voter, just as an 18-year-old would. I would say, no, thank you very much, but I am on the voters list. Why has my name been dropped? I'm not dead. Election Commission says, what can we do? You did not fill a form. Now, that's one basic change. And wherever in the world you do this shift of onus from the state to the voter, you're bound to lose about 20% of the population. And not anyone, 20% usually of the bottom of the pile. In the US, who do not figure on the voters list? Disproportionately, the blacks, the homeless, the ethnic minorities, and recent migrants. In India, this could mean something similar.
Yeah, in the case of Bihar, what would that 20% who would not be able to enroll themselves be? Because if the ECI has now put up this list as directed by the Supreme Court, is there any sense you have of the kind of people who have been left out and unfairly left out, unjustly left out?
One, we have evidence, others, we have a sense.
Hmm.
The one clear evidence so far is that more women have been left out than men. Now, I'm not saying that election commission was deliberately trying to keep women out, and that's the whole structural issue here. If you are a woman living alone, your son is in Punjab working there, how would you ensure that your form reaches on time? You know, so what we know is that in the deleted list, ideally it should have been same number of men and women. Ideally, it should have been more men than women because men migrate more out from Bihar than women do. And what do we have? 6 lakh more women have been deleted than men. 6 lakh. This is not a small figure. I mean, if someone said 3 lakh more men have been deleted, I would have said, yeah, stands to reason. You know, 6 lakh more women. That's one thing we know for sure. And the overall impression that we have is that it is basically the migrants, the poor, working class. Working class from Bihar is all over India. Wherever you are, you can find. Go to Leh Ladakh, go to Arunachal Pradesh, and those who are building the roads are these migrant workers from Bihar. So these are the ones who are likely to be left out. And also, in the case of Bihar, this would work against the younger population, younger and the more migrant population. So, younger, migrant, less educated, and women. These are the categories that are likely to be more targeted. The second tectonic shift is for the first time in the history of India, we are asking everyone, I don't know if you're a citizen of India or not, unless you give me documents to prove. Now, for the first 75 years of our republic, when it came to elections, the rule has been exactly the opposite. The rule is, if I come to Bombay, I come to your house, I presume that you are an Indian citizen. If I get an objection, if I get doubt, then I may ask you for certificate, but the presumption is that of citizenship. Now the presumption has been overturned. The presumption is I don't know you're a citizen unless you give me certificates. And what are those certificates? Election Commission has come up with this absolutely arbitrary and weird list of 11 documents. You must possess one of them. Now, the moment anyone, those who are listening to this show, if you ask an ordinary person, what documents do you have? They'll flash an Aadhaar card.
Yeah, because
Election Commission.
Aadhaar became mandatory almost, right? Everything will function only if you have an Aadhaar. So you would presume that
Absolutely.
that is a proof of identity of citizenship.
Absolutely. For the last 10 years, everyone is being told link Aadhaar to this, that. You go to airport, link your Aadhaar to that, bank, and everything. And now, when it comes to your being the citizen of this country, they say no, Aadhaar is not acceptable. What else do people have? Epic card. Election Commission's own issued Epic card. Commission says sorry, we can't accept this. What else do you have? Ration card. Commission says no, that's fraudulent. So, what are the documents we're left with? Commission says bring your birth certificate. And please, can you get birth certificate your parents as well? What kind of a joke is this in this country? Birth certificate, or they say your degree. Yes, you may have a degree, but this person who's gone to Arunachal Pradesh to build roads, surely he did not have a degree. That's why he is where he is. The one thing that we had in this country was that adult franchise was genuinely universal. And in a country like India, the only way to make it universal was number one, have a presumption of citizenship. Don't ask for document unless you have serious suspicions. And number two, I will come to your house to make you a voter. You don't have to go somewhere. These two things, and we must remember great people like Shukumar Sen, the very first election commissioner of India. These people really went out of their way to ensure that every single Indian must be on the rolls. Election Commission for the last 75 years has issued all kinds of strange and almost they look strange instructions about how do you ensure that someone who has no house should be on the electoral rolls. Someone who lives in a temple should be on the electoral rolls. An orphan who cannot tell you his or her parents' names should be on the electoral rolls. For the first 75 years, this is what we have done. This is the greatest achievement of our democracy. And today, the same election commission says, no, you have to prove to me that you are a citizen of this country. You have to fill a form. You have to do this. So it's like a scheme where you apply for something. I'll check your forms. Maybe you qualify for the scheme. Maybe you don't qualify for these benefits. Voting is not one of those schemes. That's my fundamental right. And that is being taken away.
So, Yogendra, is this then not about cleaning up an electoral roll and, making sure it is as accurate, as complete, and up to date as possible, but more about a political agenda that we have seen implemented in states like Assam, where the NRC was enacted. We've heard the Prime Minister in his latest Independence Day speech talk about a conspiracy to create a demographic shift in this country, to change the demography of this country. Are we to link these two exercises, not directly maybe, but the SIR and what the ECI or the Election Commission of India is trying to do with the Bihari electoral roll? Is that linked to this political outlook that we are trying to figure out who is a citizen and not a citizen?
I'm afraid that's the only conclusion one can draw because it is not about cleaning up the roles. I've been looking at the outcomes now that the lists have been made public. In booth after booth, yesterday someone brought me a booth where 924 names have been registered in one single home. House number 6. All the entire booth, 924 people have been registered on one single house. What kind of cleaning up is that? Uh, every day you come up with strange things. Yesterday we were discussing one single voter whose name appears in 10 places. So that surely is not cleaning up. Something else is happening here. And that is from the back door introducing the citizenship issue. Now, I have no problem if the government wants to find out who the citizens are and who are not citizens. It is the job of the Home Ministry. Do it properly, do it in a fair way. All right. But please, for heaven's sake, do not use election commission for this. And this is a question, rather, which is not coming up for the first time. In the early 1980s, one very overzealous election officer said, the constitution says you have to be a citizen of India, so I'm going to examine your citizenship. And he actually issued notice to 1 lakh people, mostly Muslims, to say, please bring certificates for your citizenship. The matter went up all the way to the Supreme Court. And this is the famous Lal Hussain case, where the Supreme Court clearly said, this is none of your business. Keep away. This is for the government to do. Election Commission must not get into this exercise. And this business of issuing notice to thousands of persons merely on the basis of suspicion is unconstitutional. So it's a very, very famous case of the Supreme Court. And after that judgment of the Supreme Court in mid-80s, the Election Commission has issued multiple instructions to people, to all its officials, to please keep away from this issue. This is not your job. Don't get into this. So Election Commission in one single order overturns the constitutional scheme, overturns the Supreme Court order, ignores its own written instructions given over the years, and suddenly becomes an extension of the Home Ministry. That's not the job of the Election Commission. Election Commission's job is not to do policing. Their only job is to ensure that every possible eligible Indian should be on voters' list, that they should be able to vote in a way which is free and fair, and after a clean count, they should say, this person has won, that person has lost. The rest is not their business. Why are they getting into it?
This is at a very conceptual and on a level of principles, but even practically I was reading that within the year that elections are scheduled, the ECI never does this kind of intensive role revision. So that seems, so is there are not just political agendas. But if I were to come down to something more material, which is that assembly elections are around the corner, we know the opposition parties are now criticizing the election commission for trying to disenfranchise certain types of voters. There is a rally that the Congress party and the RJD are doing at this point of time. So would you even go so far as to say that the ECI's decisions have a direct impact on the outcome of the election, as some of these opposition parties are alleging? Or is that too big a leap?
We don't know, but if you do something like this just a few months before election, obviously someone would say, "What's happening here?" And as you correctly reminded, fortunately, the Election Commission of India over the years has not only developed some conventions and ways of working, they have very elaborate written guidelines. And one of those guidelines is that yes, you can do intensive revision, but we, Election Commission, we shall not carry out intensive revision in any state in the year in which that state goes to polls. And there is a written order of Election Commission of 2004 or 5, which said that we will carry out the intensive revision in the rest of these many states. However, we are going to leave out Maharashtra and Arunachal because their assembly elections are expected in this particular year. This is the Election Commission's own order. These are not my advice to Election Commission. And suddenly, you do it in not only in that year, you do it just 4 months before the election. Naturally, everyone would be suspended. This is the election, Anuradha. You would recall when assembly elections took place in Bihar last time, the margin between the winner and the loser throughout the state of Bihar was less than 0.5%. It's that tight an election. And in that tight an election, you've already thrown out 65 lakh names. An election which is decided by 0.2%, I think, was the gap. You've already made a difference of about 9%. And it cannot be anybody's case that all these 9% were Congress and RJD voters. No. But even if the differential impact, people who work in financial markets would understand, we are speaking of differential impact. If the differential impact is only 1%, so very crudely speaking, if 4% of BJP voters have been removed and 5% of RJD Congress voters have been removed, well, that simply tilts the scale completely. And this is this, Anuradha, when we are not fully through the deletion exercise. We've just had step one of the deletion exercise. Step two is waiting to happen because documents have not yet been checked.
Yeah.
So we would have further wave of deletion.
Right. So the
That
number could
completely
actually
changes the topography.
be bigger. So at this point of time, given that this is being heard by the Supreme Court said, please put up the 65 lakh plus people who've been deleted, and put those names up with the reasons for deletion. What happens next? Would the best outcome at this point for Bihar, given the principles that you have outlined, both at the level of Bihar, both at the level of the Indian, adult franchise system, would the best outcome be to nullify the SIR, or are we getting ahead of ourselves?
The correct thing to do would, of course, be to nullify this completely unconstitutional exercise. It does not mean that we do not go ahead with the voter purification exercise. Of course, the Election Commission must do that. And in my article yesterday, I've actually drawn attention to what can the Election Commission do. Of course, Election Commission should do a house-to-house survey. Along with that house-to-house survey, they should also do a sample check of their own accuracy. In that house-to-house survey, they should pay as much attention to inclusion as they are paying to exclusions,
No,
which is a weird thing. 65 lakh names deleted and not one single name added in the entire state of Bihar. So do it properly. There are ways to do it, but do not mix this little medicine called voter list revision with steroids and poison that you are doing. And detach it completely from election exercise. Do it in a non-election year. do it properly, thoroughly, with your preparation, and respond to all the things. But this tectonic shift, illegal, illegitimate shift by a sheer executive order of the Election Commission of India, that must go. This is not acceptable, because now it's Bihar, next is Bengal and Assam, and you know what kind of havoc it will cause in Bengal and Assam.
So, Yogendra, let us leave the Bihar SIR at this point and move to something else, which Rahul Gandhi has been at the forefront of. Actually, the Congress party and some of the other opposition parties, right from the times of the Maharashtra Assembly election last year, when the opposition party, they were reduced to some 50 plus seats in the 288 member assembly, have been accusing or have been making allegations of this big increase between the parliamentary elections and the assembly elections of voters, surge of voting beyond 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. There have been many allegations made, and most recently, Rahul Gandhi said that they have studied an assembly segment in the Bangalore Central parliamentary seat and come up with evidence that suggests that the electoral rolls are flawed and the electoral rolls may have been manipulated. Now, this question on the ECI, which has been raised, how does that get addressed? How should we, as people who are watching this, process it? Or should, because a lot of people will dismiss it as, oh, you're not winning elections, so this is what you're doing. And if you have a problem with the electoral roll, then why don't you have the SIR? We are all hearing these arguments. What is your take on how we understand the allegations made by Rahul Gandhi and some of the opposition parties who have taken to the streets during the monsoon session to protest the Election Commission of India's practices?
First thing first, Anuradha, as I said in the beginning, uh, voter list and integrity of electoral exercise is a sacrosanct matter. So, and it is very easy for anyone who loses an election to say the election was unfair. That's the easiest thing you do when you fail in an exam. To blame the
Yeah.
teacher, to blame the system, to blame the paper, and
We've
such
all
like.
heard about the
Uh,
blaming of EVMs, which you have always sort of not accepted. You have always sort of maintained a distance from that, failure of EVMs or manipulation of EVMs in the past, from what I remember.
Yeah, my general thing has been that look, electoral integrity is such an issue where please bring evidence before you say something in the public domain. Now, I'll tell you, Madhya Pradesh election, I was completely flummoxed by the result. I traveled there and I couldn't fathom that BJP could have a 9 percentage point advantage. But probably, but I just kept quiet. I said, okay, it's my fault. You know, that the outcome does not agree with my intuition. It cannot be a reflection on the outcome. First of all, it should be a reflection on me. So I kept quiet. In Haryana, again, I was completely surprised by the result. I mean, you do get surprised. Elections are there to surprise you. So the first thing would be to say, okay, I was wrong. That's what I thought. What happened in Maharashtra went beyond all these things. And I wrote then, I said, look, if NDA had won the election, I would not have been surprised. But to have a 14-point advantage, I mean, that's beyond I must have been traveling in a different country. It cannot be so. But I said, look, well, let's bring some evidence. The first evidence that the Congress has brought, these are not decisive evidence. The evidence that they brought was a very unusual inflation of votes, voters list, in a strategic manner. Now, that's an important thing. That does it establish that this inflation led to BJP's votes? You cannot have a one-to-one relationship, but it's a good enough a point, an argument that needs to be looked into. What does the election commission say? Your agents were looking at it. Your party had the lists were public. Why did you not object earlier? All right, they failed. Assuming that the Congress failed in its duty, but hasn't the election commission failed? How have you entered some 40 lakh new names in the space of just 6 months? You know, which is so there is something to begin with. Is that a conclusive allegation? No, but Is that good enough for any serious and honest election commission to introspect? Of course, more than that. Nothing from
and investigate on its
Absolutely.
own.
Now
Yeah.
come to Bangalore Central. What is the basic claim? Rahul Gandhi is saying that in this particular segment, and incidentally, this was the segment that completely overturned the Bangalore Central result because Congress was winning everywhere else, came to this segment and lost the election. And Rahul Gandhi says that this in this particular assembly segment, which is unusually large, it has 6 lakh voters, Mahadev. He says there are more than 1 lakh cases that we have documented which look fishy. We have persons having multiple names, persons without photographs, 70-year-old people registering as a new voter, all and then so many persons in one house. Now, suppose it was not Rahul Gandhi. Suppose it was Anuradha who went to the Chief Election Commissioner and gave this in a sealed envelope. And Anuradha says, look, I'm scared, I don't even want to put my name on it. Should the Election Commission not investigate it? You know, how can you say, who are you? Give me an affidavit. Do that. Clearly, if I'm in charge of cleaning up a
Go
building
look,
and some
go
passerby
look, go check.
shouts at me and says, your third floor is
Yeah.
dirty as hell, what should I do? I should just send someone and go and check it out. Before I turn around and say, who are you? Give me an affidavit, give a written complaint. So if I say, give me an affidavit and written complaint, it means I'm not interested in cleaning of the building. I'm interested in maintaining my position. This is what the Election Commission is doing. I mean, for heaven's sake, the whole thing just reeks of bad intent. So, what is the Election Commission's response? The response is, well, the voters list were there. Why did you not check it earlier? All right, sir, we made a mistake. Then the thing is, you give an affidavit. But, sir, people had actually given you affidavits in the past. Did you do anything about that? The Samajwadi Party had given 18,000 affidavits. Nothing has been done on that. So, and then you say, give me affidavit. And not just that, either give me affidavits or apologize to the nation. Now, that sounded like a very poor Bombay Hindi film script. You are a CEC. You're not supposed to do these things. This is, the BJP spokespersons who say these things. This is a favorite television debate stuff, which has sunk to a very low level in India anyway. But those things I get to hear, and I say, all right, इनका काम यही है, ऐसी बातें बोलना. But Chief Election Commissioner doesn't respond like this to serious questions. And what does he say? How can I issue notices to 1.5 lakh people just because someone is complaining? But sir, no one is asking you to issue notices. Please do your own homework. Please look at these 1 lakh cases and say, okay, these cases look like Rahul Gandhi has made a mistake. These cases look like cases where my officers made a mistake. I'll call them, I'll haul them up. These cases look like some third party was playing fishy. Let me find that out. And these many cases look like that these voters were trying to act over smart. I will issue notice only to those tiny 4,000, 2,000 people to say, why were you trying to be over smart with me? But to use that as a pretext for not wanting to investigate this matter, this is shocking. This was not one leader just standing up and saying the whole election is rigged. Someone is giving you 1 lakh pages worth of a document of evidence, and you're telling the country that you don't want to investigate. I mean, such things really deepen your suspicion.
People far away from Bihar at this point, people in urban areas like Mumbai, where I'm sitting in right now, where a lot of my audience is from, there is, and you know how the voter turnout is in Mumbai and in South Mumbai. It's almost a stereotype. It's become a joke now about how the elite react when it comes to all of these things. Do you feel that the SIR in Bihar, the kind of tectonic shifts that you have outlined for us, is if that SIR goes through, and what it means for universal adult franchise in India. Do you think that is being understood enough? And what is it that should scare us all? Because it is Bihar today, like you said, it will might be Assam and West Bengal next, because that's in the line of elections. But for me to sit in Mumbai and think that perhaps we have a government, you're shaking the foundations of what we accept, right? And then we have nothing to go by.
Yes, and I'm afraid this is not being understood. Probably people like me are at fault. We're not unable to make everyone understand. And to a lay person or even to someone who's reading newspapers, the popular impression is ये बिहार की वोटर लिस्ट में कुछ लफड़ा था जो ठीक हो रहा है. Maybe they are overdoing it.
और ऑपोजिशन हारने के हारने वाली है तो ये सब कर रहे हैं. सी दीज आर ऑल द थिंग्स दैट एवरीबॉडी इज सेइंग, राइट, वेदर इट्स ऑन व्हाट्सएप और अदरवाइज.
Yeah, so that's really is something that we need to explain to people. Look, the foundation of democracy is that voters choose the government. The government doesn't choose voters. The day government starts choosing voters, that's the end of everything. Then, why should I care for whether I need to do anything? If I can manage elections, if I can manage the voter list, which is the foundation of election, then why should I care? Why should I be responsive to people? Why should I do things that people want me to do? I know ऐसे ही है इलेक्शन मैनेज हो जाएगा and the at the heart of democratic exercise is to retain the unpredictability, to retain the uncertainty of electoral outcomes, which puts the fear of God in the minds of the rulers and the politicians. The moment that fear goes, after that it's complete arbitrariness and not merely to the poor or the poorest. What you see, as long as there's a basic accountability and the fear, lok laj as we say in Hindi, yeah, public में impression खराब जाएगा. This is not done. This is what politicians think. Not this is moral or immoral. No, this would lead a bad impression. And I fear the consequences of that. The day I stop fearing those consequences, then I would simply go ahead and do whatever I want in economic policy, in fiscal policy, in foreign policy, and what have you. So, that is one thing in which every single Indian must have a vested interest in ensuring that the governments must not be allowed to choose the voters.
Yogendra, that is the point I think that I'm going to close this conversation on. You talked about foreign policy, economic policy, and all of that. Let me tell you, from Mumbai, in a week where we have experienced havoc and monsoon mayhem, and in any case, the city is really, our basic civic administration in this city, like many other cities in India, is absolutely subpar. We fail we experience on a daily basis what you just said, where log kya kahenge is something I don't think politicians in this city and in this state worry about anymore. And if elections and the integrity of elections are the only way to ensure that, we have to pay very close attention to what is happening in the Bihar SIR case, in the allegations being made by the opposition parties, and to the kind of work that you're doing. Thank you very much, as usual, for making time.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you very much for watching. Do keep watching us if you want to get a perspective on some of the key issues of our times. Don't forget to subscribe, do share, and do keep tabs.